Morning. Good afternoon, kind of.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. So if I act a little rattled, be patient with me. Right as our class ended earlier, there was a wreck right in front of my house. And it probably happened within about, I don't know, 3 minutes after our class ended. And it just got cleaned up just within the last few minutes.
Was everyone okay?
The guy who was driving really injured his hand. I don't know how badly he injured it. I didn't realize for a few minutes. Our neighbor who wasn't in her car was parked in front of she parks it in front, and we probably have, I don't know, we just have the sidewalk, like our house is right up against the road. And I walked out there because my neighbor looked a little rattled, and she's an older lady and her son lives with her, but he wasn't home at the moment. So I walked out there, and the guy got out of the car, and I didn't notice until took me a few seconds to realize that he was bleeding all over the place. And I mean, for me, you know, I'm not a big fan of blood. So when I say it was bleeding all over the place, it was dripping all over the place. And I just came in and got some paper towels, and then the police came, the ambulance came, the fire station came, and I was mainly being morally supportive for my neighbor, and I didn't see anything. All I did was hear it. And so I offered to clean up his walker because he had a walker, and I thought, you know, you don't want to go home after you've been injured like that and have your walker all covered in blood. And so I just helped clean up his walker and was morally supportive. But they ended up taking him to the hospital because
Neighbor was hit like on the sidewalk?
No, her car was. Her car was parked in front of the place. And so her car got hit, and it totally nailed the back end of her car. It probably totaled his car. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I just heard a major, you know, noise and looked out there and realized that there had been an accident. All right, so if I sound a little rattled, that's what happened right in between classes.
Well, that's rattling. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I think I'm glad because I'm leaving right after class today, I thought about moving my car out so that I could pack it more easily. And I was actually getting ready to move it as soon as class was over. And then I heard that, and now I'm kind of glad I didn't move my car out there because it pushed her car right into where my car would have been.
Miracles, small
Yes.
miracles.
You got to be grateful for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because then that would have completely botched up your plans to drive to Richmond.
Or I would have gone out and gotten a rental. But it
Well,
wouldn't have been a
yeah.
fast thing.
No. Well, I'm glad you're safe.
Yeah, it would have really stink. All right. Let's get into this. So we're digestive system.
Miss Mary.
Yeah,
I'm all over the place today, but I'm here.
you're okay. I was just telling everyone else that right before right after class ended, there was an accident in front of my place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it happened just within a few minutes after class ended.
Oh,
So,
gosh. Is everyone
no.
okay? What?
Everyone's fine. The guy that was driving ended up getting taken to the hospital in an ambulance because he did a number on his hand.
Oh, wow.
I think I don't think he broke anything. I think he's just going to end up having to get stitches because he was bleeding pretty badly.
Ooh. Yeah, that's traumatizing.
I didn't see it. I just heard it.
Oh,
And
good. That's good.
I went out to be morally supportive of my neighbor. I didn't do anything except stand there because I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
But actually, before we jump into this, I have a video. Let's watch a video for a second.
Okay.
Talking about the different organs of the digestive system. So abdominal viscera, just going through the different organs of the digestive system in a model.
Win at work by communicating effectively with
university, and I started taking bodies apart, and I realized, wow, this stuff is really packed in here.
Okay, let's move it all the way to the beginning again.
Hi, when I was a kid, I knew about the organs of the body, but I couldn't work out how they all fit in. I think I assumed they must be neatly organized with a bit of space in between. Probably the illustrations of the time for children showed that sort of thing. I couldn't really work it out. It wasn't, even through all my school years, it wasn't until I got to university and I started taking bodies apart that I realized, wow, this stuff is really packed in here. We had a comment last week. Somebody asked, could I go through all the abdominal viscera? And I thought, oh. And then I was teaching last week, chatting to a student. She wasn't entirely sure where the stomach was. So I thought, that's a good idea, that. We should go through all of the abdominal viscera. So yeah, I've had an interest in anatomy for a very long time. And it hasn't really disappeared. I think the stage I'm at now is the more I know, the more I realise I don't know, and the more I try to hold in my head, the harder it is for me to hold everything in my head. If that makes any sense to me. But same as anything, as you become an expert, you realise you don't know very much at all. Anyway, right. So what is the abdomen? And then what we'll do is we're going to take all these parts away from the model. So as we go, we'll point things out. As we remove things, we'll try to see and pay attention to what lies posterior to that organ or nearby, so we've got an idea of where things are relative to one another. Also remember that whenever we're talking about the body, whenever we use left or right, we're talking about the body's left and the body's right, okay? Not our view, but the body's left, the body's right. And we'll work our way back to the posterior abdominal wall and see what we see. So then the abdomen is the region of the trunk between the thorax and the pelvis, is your typical textbook description, which sounds nice and tidy. Now with the superior end, it is nice and tidy. What we're seeing here is the diaphragm. So the diaphragm does cleanly separate the abdomen from the thorax. So the diaphragm's got kind of this curvy shape to it. So it's a three-dimensional thing. It's curving over the liver here. But the diaphragm is a muscular sheet that separates the thorax from the abdomen. Now, in theory, it's a little bit harder because the pelvis, well, here's the pelvis, and the pelvis has these bony parts. So much of the pelvic viscera is down here. This is pelvis, but the abdomen also extends all the way down here. So really, what's happening is that the contents of the abdomen are covered in the layer of peritoneum, like a thin sheet. So it's almost like all of these contents here, like it's all in a bag. And where that bag sinks down into the pelvis, the abdominal contents are sat on top of the pelvic contents, the pelvic viscera, and it's the peritoneum then that's really separating the pelvic viscera from the abdominal viscera. So then that distinction between abdomen and pelvis is a little bit softer down here. And of course, when women get pregnant and the uterus becomes enlarged, or even when your bladder fills with urine, that becomes enlarged, those push from the pelvis up into the abdomen. So there's a bit of interplay between the abdomen and the pelvis. Okay, what can we see? So we see some organs up here. The biggest organ is the liver. It is a very big organ. It's on the right side of the abdomen, but it's extending across the midline to the left side. It's a very large organ, and it's just underneath the diaphragm. So as the diaphragm moves up and down as well, the liver will move up and down with it. So there's an interplay between the thorax and the abdomen there. So there's the liver, and then nestling into the liver on the left side, this is the stomach. So the stomach, as you can see, is pushed up into the liver. You know, if I take that away, so knock it off. If we lift the liver up, that's how we'd see the stomach nestling into the liver there. Do you see? So they're very tightly stuck together. Diaphragm. And of course, the esophagus passes down through the diaphragm. And if I pop this out, there's the esophagus there. So it dives through the diaphragm. There's a hole in the diaphragm. Now, if I put the liver back, this here.
One thing that you, the stomach, the small intestines and the large intestines, all the way to the rectum is one big tube. It's all one continuous tube. And what we'll talk about here as we go through this today is that it's all one big muscular tube. It varies a little bit throughout, but it's the same tube.
If we take away the skin, we take away the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall, and we take away the peritoneum lining, the parietal peritoneum lining the abdominal cavity, we see this here.
What organs are retroperitoneal? Do you remember from before? What organs are behind the peritoneum?
The kidneys?
The kidneys?
Isn't the gallbladder as well?
I don't think the gallbladder is.
Okay.
No, the gallbladder isn't, but the kidneys are. The bladder is also underneath the peritoneum. And looking at one of the pictures we'll look at here later today, the pancreas, I think, is also peritoneal, but I'm not positive about that one. retroperitoneal.
And this is the greater omentum. This is called the policeman of the gut. And what it does is it's a connective tissue sheet that's hanging down from the greater curvature of the stomach, and it's covering all of these organs down here. And it's layers of peritoneum. It's got fat in it. It's got blood vessels. Its job here, it will adhere to that inflammation and help prevent it spreading too far. If we take the greater omentum off, now we can see the GI tract. The GI tract, or the gastrointestinal tract, is the bulk of the viscera that we find within the abdominal cavity.
So the whole muscular tube that I just talked about is a gastrointestinal tube, going from the esophagus to the stomach, to the small intestines, to the large intestines, all the way to the rectum.
The long continuous tube from the esophagus and stomach through the small intestine and the large intestine all the way through to the rectum and the anal canal. The rectum is in the pelvis and the anal canal is in the perineum. Now what we see is we can see a little bit of large bowel here. This is the ascending colon. And we see a little bit of large bowel here. This is the transverse colon. And then we see a little bit of large bowel around there, the descending colon. So this is large colon, large bowel. This then is the small intestine or the small bowel. If we remove, you see how the liver and the stomach are all superior and this stuff is squashed up against it. If I remove the liver, here's the stomach. Now the stomach is continuous with all of this. We often see in models and textbooks that the transverse colon runs across here and it looks like a picture frame around the small bowel. In you, if you're sat up, your transverse colon is probably drooping down a little bit like that. So if you're looking at abdominal x-rays, the transverse colon probably isn't going to do this. It's probably going to be looping it down here because it's actually got a mesentery. So the mesentery is a double fold of peritoneum so that's how the blood vessels and nerves and lymph.
So mesentery, he says it mesentery, doesn't matter. Mesentery, 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 connected to the transverse colon up here.
Fatty to get to and from the bowel. And because the transverse colon's got a mesentery, it means it can move around. The ascending colon and the descending colon are fixed in place to the posterior abdominal wall, so they don't move around. The small bowel also has a mesentery, so it is fairly mobile. And of course, what's happening is the food is being passed into the stomach, and then it gets pushed into the small bowel, and peristalsis, and the shortening and lengthening of the small bowel, pushes the food along the small intestine, and the nutrients get absorbed from it, and then it gets pushed into the large bowel, which largely reabsorbs water and that sort of thing. So it's helpful if it moves around. Right, okay, so stomach. Take away the stomach, we can see some other viscera deep to that. So this here, this is the pancreas. So the pancreas is doing two things. It's making hormones that it secretes into the blood to steady blood glucose levels, and it's making an exocrine secretion, a pancreatic juice that it's going to secrete into, if I take away the transverse colon, the duodenum here. So the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, and it's forming a C shape. It's curving around the pancreas here. So the pancreas has got this duct, and it's going to.
So the opening right here is the duodenum or the duodenum, looping around here, and right here, the pancreas duct, the main pancreatic duct, is going to have an entrance into the duodenum or the duodenum. Right here.
Secrete into the duodenum to help with digestion.
Let me also say one more thing. So the liver was sitting right here. And this duct, and you don't see it on here, but it's going to have it's going to merge with the hepatic duct. Hepatic meaning it's coming from the liver and the gallbladder. So this little entrance right here is the hepatopancreatic duct.
Digestion of the contents that you've just eaten that the stomach is pushed into the duodenum. Right? Pancreas, duodenum. So out here, laterally, that's the spleen. The spleen is at the tail of the pancreas. It's on the lateral left side of the body. You've got one pancreas, you've got one spleen. So the spleen is a component of the immune system. It's a store of red blood cells. It's a store of platelets, so it can help with clotting and help with.
You can see how purple it looks. Because, and you'll see this with the liver, there's a lot of blood. These are two organs, you know, in addition to your kidneys, where there is a lot of blood moving through that organ. And that's why they're the color they are.
Replacing red blood cells if you lose them, if you have an injury, you lose some blood and that sort of thing. But it's also a site where you find lots of lymphocytes and macrophages. It's a site where parts of the immune system are stored and where parts of the immune system can be activated and things like that. So it's got a couple of big roles, not least immunological. In fact, it sends red blood cells, once it's broken them down, to the liver, which is nearby. It's got a blood vessel. And it sends it across the liver. Now, the liver has got 500 odd different functions. It's got a huge number of jobs. It has a huge amount of blood passing through. All the blood from the GI tract passes through the liver, and the liver is wrapped around the inferior vena cava, which we'll see more of as we get deeper. So blood from the gut and the spleen passes through the.
What vessel runs parallel with the inferior vena cava?
The aorta?
Yep, the abdominal aorta.
Liver to the inferior vena cava, back to the rest of the circulation. Okay, so small bowel, then the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine. It passes food into the jejunum, and the jejunum becomes the ileum. So the small intestine isn't the same along its entire length.
So the small intestine is the duodenum, the jejunum, or the I can't remember how he said it. Jejunum and the ileum.
He said it weird, but it's jejunum, I think. That's how I've always.
You know, it just depends on where you came from. And it sounds like he's coming from either Australia or Great Britain, somewhere in that area.
Food passes, so the jejunum is out on this side, and the ileum is over on this side. And food passes along the length from the duodenum to the jejunum to the ileum. And if you look at the histology,
that's also why we try really hard, don't make fun of other people's pronunciations. Because he knows what he's talking about. You know he does.
I've found that working in the medical field for 20 years, like everybody kind of has their own way of saying stuff. Like
Right.
Nobody really corrects you unless you're really wrong. But
Right.
yeah.
You know, if they're really wrong, say something, but we got to be kind about it, because everybody's on a learning curve.
and the structure of the small intestine as we go along its length, it changes slightly and it does slightly different roles. So if we take the small intestine out, we can see that the small intestine is, as I said, kind of suspended, strung from the posterior abdominal wall by mesentery. So this can all move around. So now we've taken off the small intestine, we can see that duodenum. This is the.
So all of this tissue right here is mesentery. When he pulled it back, all of this is mesentery. The transverse colon was being held up here by the lesser mesentery.
Bended, strung from the posterior abdominal wall by mesentery, so this can all move around. So now we've taken off the small intestine, we can see that duodenum. This is the curve I was talking about here. First part, second part, third part, then it goes up again, fourth part. And you can see here, this is where the pancreas secretes into the duodenum. In fact, the other thing we've got here is, you might have spotted it, it's the green bit there. That there is the gallbladder. So the gallbladder is storing bile, and it's going to pass that bile through some ducts, eventually down into this point here. So the common bile.
It really does look kind of green. If you looked at it, it looks kind of green. Well, it does look kind of green. In all reality, it's kind of got a greenish tint to it.
Duct is going to pass bile into the duodenum here at the same point the pancreas passes the duodenum. And the bile is also going to help with digestion. It's going to help emulsify fats and that sort of thing. And remember those 500 different jobs that the liver does? Well, some of the weight.
So the bile that comes from the gallbladder is involved in emulsifying and helping to absorb and digest fats. Bile salts. That's why people who get their gallbladder removed, which is a pretty common surgery, struggle with some digestion issues sometimes and have to change their diet.
Waste it produces is going to get passed into the small bowel to be removed from the body through the common bile duct through the same route. That's why bile is green, and that's what makes feces brown. In fact, it's recycled red blood cells. Anyway, so duodenum here. Now, what else can we see? So we can see the ascending colon, the descending colon a little bit better. We can see the posterior abdominal wall, and we can see some of the blood vessels supplying blood to the large bowel here. Now, on the superior edge of the pancreas, so if I take this off, we just jump ahead, we can see the major blood vessels. This is the aorta, the abdominal aorta. So the aorta is supplying blood to the thorax, to the abdomen, and eventually it's going to send off branches to the pelvis and the lower limbs and what have you. That's the aorta. Now the aorta has got 3 anterior branches, and those anterior branches are going to supply blood to most of the things in the abdomen. So just superior to the pancreas, we have the celiac trunk. You can see it sending off branches to the pancreas, to the spleen, to the duodenum, and off to the liver and that sort.
So the celiac trunk, what were the branches of the celiac trunk? Remember from a really long time ago? Here's the splenic artery, the left gastric artery, and the common hepatic artery.
Sort of thing. Now on the inferior side of the pancreas, we can see the superior mesenteric artery and the superior mesenteric vein. So the superior mesenteric artery is a branch of the aorta. The superior mesenteric vein is going to be sending blood back to the.
So if you remember, those are the 3 main arteries coming off the abdominal aorta, the celiac trunk, the superior mesenteric artery, and the inferior mesenteric artery.
Portal vein and the liver. Down here, we can see the bladder. So the bladder is in the pelvis. Normally then, if we had peritoneum here, the bladder would be covered over by peritoneum, and that would mark the inferior end of the abdominal cavity. That's where the abdomen would end. The descending colon then becomes the sigmoid colon here, as it makes a bit of an S shape and wiggles around. And when it goes back there and straightens out, it becomes the rectum. That's what the rectum means. Rectus means straight. So the rectum is the straight part. Take that off, then we can see the aorta, and next to it is the inferior vena cava. So this is going to carry blood back from the abdomen. The liver is going to send blood into the inferior vena cava, and then that's going to go through the diaphragm, straight back into the heart, into the right side of the heart, into the right atrium, and then off around the body. There's the superior vena cava up there. So, inferior vena cava, aorta, we can see a whole bunch of blood vessels branching from it. The really important ones are on.
So celiac trunk right there, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery.
Here, and of course we can see these two. These are the kidneys. So the kidneys are posterior in the abdomen. They're in the posterior abdominal wall. They are posterior to the peritoneum.
What does it mean to be how do we describe it when we say it's posterior to the peritoneum?
Behind.
How else could we call it?
Dorsal.
How else could we call it?
Is it retrotennial?
Retroperitoneal.
That's it.
That's it. Yes.
Tissue layer, so they get called retroperitoneal. So the kidneys are receiving a huge amount of blood. So they've got some big blood vessels. You can see the veins here because the renal veins are anterior. The left renal vein has to run quite a long way. It's running anterior to the aorta, but the renal arteries are posterior to those. And they're going to be large as well. So large blood vessels supplying small organs mean that these organs are doing something with the blood. They're processing.
What are these little white things right here?
Ureters?
Yep, the ureters. Good job. What are these right here? Up here and up here.
The kidneys? No.
Oh, here's the kidneys. What are these?
Adrenal.
The adrenal glands, yes.
In the blood. Of course, what they're doing is largely managing the amount of fluid inside the body. You are a bag of salty water. That's what your cells are.
So your kidneys, just like you said, they're managing the fluid within your body, just like we were talking about earlier. That's their main focus, is to work on managing fluids, maintaining the blood volume, and therefore the rest of the volume.
Evolved from, and now you have a bag that you carry that salty water around in. You have to maintain the right amount of salty water, the right amount of salt in it, for your cells to be happy to function normally. So that's largely what the kidneys are doing. They're managing all of that. So then from each kidney, we can see these. So these are the ureters, and the ureters then are going to pass urine from the kidney down to the bladder, and they're on the posterior abdominal wall, overlying these muscles here. So you see a number of muscles making up the posterior abdominal wall. Now on the superior pole of each kidney, we have a suprarenal gland or an adrenal gland. Now the adrenal glands make adrenaline, adrenaline and noradrenaline. Obviously that's involved.
Or epinephrine and norepinephrine.
In the fight or flight response, the adrenaline rush.
What one is the fight or flight response with the autonomic nervous system? In the fight or flight response, which one is the autonomic nervous system? Which part is of the autonomic nervous system is a fight or flight response?
The parasympathetic? No, sympathetic. Is that what you mean?
The sympathetic.
The activation of the sympathetic nervous system, so you can fight or
My
flight.
audio just cut out, and I thought you were calling her.
Say it again. What'd you say?
My audio just cut out. It was glitching, and I thought you just called her pathetic, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like,
That's
"Oh my god!"
hysterical. That doesn't seem like Professor Gale.
Oh, that's funny.
And they also make a whole bunch of steroid hormones, glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, that sort of thing, which manage manage homeostasis, manage metabolism and that sort of thing. So again, related to the gut and energy and food and that sort of thing. So suprarenal vein. We've still got the spleen out here. So can you see how the spleen is typically, it's a little bit posterior, but it's lateral. Can you see how it's nestling up into the diaphragm? Whereas the kidneys are a little bit more inferior. And the left kidney, do you see it's a little bit higher than the right kidney? And that's because of the...
I was going to say, why is it a little lower? Because of where the liver sits.
Liver. So the liver is so big, it's actually pushing the right kidney, so it's a little bit lower in the abdomen. So if you were to look at a transverse section across here, you might see just one kidney on one side and the spleen and all these other bits. You might miss the other kidney. If you go a bit lower, you'll get a section through both kidneys. You can see both CT or MR. You can see the diaphragm then arching back there. These thick muscles here, these are the psoas muscles, the psoas major. It's got a little psoas minor lying on top of it. This is iliacus, and these two muscles will join, insert into the femur, and give hip flexion. So they'll lift your knee towards your chest. These muscles here, these are quadratus lumborum, and they're running kind of in that direction from the vertebral column to the pelvis, which will give you a little bit of lateral flexion of your trunk, right? These arteries here, these we were talking about last week, these are the testicular arteries running from the aorta in the abdomen all the way down to the scrotum, because the testes started to form up here and then they descended in the embryo and the fetus, and they trailed their blood vessels behind, and you can see the testicular veins draining back. The left one goes to the left renal vein, the right one goes directly to the inferior vena cava. So the aorta ends when it divides into left and right common iliac arteries. That's what we're seeing here. The left and right common iliac arteries then divide again into an external iliac artery, which is going to run down to the lower limb, run down to the thigh and the leg, and then an internal iliac artery, which is going to go down into the pelvis and supply blood to the viscera of the pelvis and also to the external genitalia and that sort of thing. So I take the stomach off, there's the pancreas, and if I take the pancreas off, there's the kidney. So that's the sort of layering that we're dealing with. Can you see the adrenal glands there? Just popping up. Now the aorta, you can't see it because it's just running through a gap in the diaphragm there, but the inferior vena cava has just been cut because we've removed the liver. And that's it. I can't take anything else off. If I was to take more off, we'd be at the muscles. I'd take the muscles off and we'd be at the other side. That's what you find inside the abdominal cavity if you take things out bit by bit. Well, I enjoyed that, so thank you for that suggestion.
Okay. So just to give us a little bit of an overview of what we're getting into. So major functions of the digestive system: ingestion of food, secretion of digestive enzymes, mixing and propulsion of food meaning moving it down this tube that we have, this continuous tube. Digesting the food into smaller and more absorbable molecules using both mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical, physically breaking it up, chemically breaking it up. And then absorption of the digested products, and then defecation. If you hear my cat being demanding here, you'll hear that little squawk. That's my cat. Yeah. See, I'm a little bit of a squawker. She says that because she's on my lap, she deserves attention. So Major organs include the mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestines, large intestines, and anus. Accessory organs include the salivary glands, the pharynx, the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas. Looking specifically at the mouth, the oral cavity, first major part of the oral cavity is the hard palate, then the soft palate, which connects up with the uvula. When you swallow, from what I've been told, because we've always kind of wondered what the function of that darn uvula was, that little hanger downer thing in the back of your throat. When you swallow, it actually elevates up against the nasopharynx, preventing food from moving up into your nasal cavity. I read that in a book recently. The tongue. Yeah. The fauces, meaning the opening in the back here. Nasopharynx. Oropharynx, remember oral meaning mouth. Laryngopharynx, esophagus. Looking at the ducts, the salivary ducts and the salivary glands. The one that gives you probably the most grief when you go to the dentist, the sublingual gland duct that's linked to the submandibular gland. Actually, bear with me here. Is that right? It is right. The sublingual, we don't see the sublingual gland on here, but sublingual, actually, it's not right. You guys, your book has this marked as being the sublingual duct. That doesn't look like a duct. The answer, I'm using that, I picked these answers from the book and now I'm looking at it and I'm like, that isn't right at all. But this would be your sublingual gland. These are your sublingual ducts. But we'll go with what this says because these are the answers I got from the manual. The submandibular gland. Oh, what I was going to say, I'm so sorry, a little distracted. Sublingual ducts, these are the ones that get all the little tartar right on your incisors on the bottom teeth. This is the one that when high school kids like to gleek, meaning push liquid out of their sublingual gland. This is what where they're doing that. The lingual frenulum, holding holding the bottom of the lip down. Actually, no, holding the tongue down on the lower part of the mouth. Parotid gland, right, and anterior and inferior to your ear. Parotid duct, opening into the parotid duct. Lingual frenulum, the way to think about that lingual frenulum is it's a little ligament that's connecting the tongue down to the bottom of the mouth. So submandibular gland, parotid gland, this should be the sublingual gland. These should be the sublingual ducts and the openings into the sublingual ducts. Here's that lingual frenulum that we just saw right here. Lingual frenulum. Right here. Down below the inferior labral frenulum. Labral meaning lip. So it's the tendon that's attaching the bottom of the mouth, bottom of the gums to the inferior lip. Vestibule. Down here. Gingiva. Gums. Back here, your palatine tonsil that you can see not on this one, but you can see it on this one. Actually, do you see it on this one? You don't, but it would be right about right here. Fauces meaning the opening. Hard palate, the soft palate, the uvula, cheek. And at just the teeth, 4 incisors on the front, 2 cuspids, premolars, molars. If you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt me here. The anatomy of the tooth. Apical foramina or foramen, where the nerve, artery, and vein are entering the tooth. The periodontal ligament. What does the periodontal ligament? Do you remember what kind of joint is this that holds the tooth in the mouth?
Gomphosis, if I'm
Good
saying that
job.
right.
Yes, the gomphosis joint right there. Good job. The cementum that is attaching the periodontal ligament to the tooth via the cementum. The pulp cavity with the pulp. The blood supply, nerves follow veins and arteries, blood vessels, so nerves follow blood vessels. So they're all coming in by the apical foramen. The gingiva, the dentin, and the enamel on top. One of the hardest substance in your body, the enamel. What do they do when they do a root canal, guys? When someone has to have a root canal done, what do they do?
They go down the root and pull the nerve or destroy the nerve.
They go
drill down in there.
They drill down in there and they fill it up. I just
Do
recently,
destroy the nerve.
they do destroy the nerve. So I've had one root canal done, and I have a crown over the top of it. And they told me, you know, I just recently had to have a cavity filled underneath my most recent crown, and I had to have a cavity filled underneath it. And when I asked, because I don't have a lot of nerves in my mouth, but I didn't want to make their lives hard, because if I needed anesthesia before they did it to make my life easy and their life easy, let's do it. And she was like, you don't have any nerves. If we replace your crown there, you're not going to feel anything anyway. And she was right. I didn't feel a thing. But the gingiva, top part of the tooth, the crown, the neck, the root, moving down a little further, the stomach, esophagus right here, the duodenum coming off the stomach, then the jejunum, and then the ileum. Ileum is what's going to connect up with the colon. So esophagus, stomach, duodenum, jejunum, ileum. You have about 25 feet of small intestines on average. Ileum attaches to the cecum, moves up to the ascending colon, to the right colic flexure or the hepatic flexure, transverse colon, left colic flexure or splenic flexure, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum. What we saw with that man earlier, the greater omentum that comes over the top working like a sheet. The mesocolon, the mesentery contains vessels and nerves supplying the intestines and the different organs down, mainly the intestines. Let's just say the intestines. With the greater omentum removed, the lesser omentum up here attached to the stomach, lining the stomach. The liver and the gallbladder. This picture. Now, looking at this, here, this is your stomach. Mesocolon. All of these little places right here, these little attachment points. This is mesocolon right here. But here's your stomach. And I was trying to figure out what this was. It says it's a retroperitoneal organ. What do you think it is?
Did you say it's behind the stomach?
Well, here's the stomach right here. This is the anterior side.
Okay.
What do you think this is?
Not the kidney because it's down farther. Part of the pancreas, maybe?
Well, the pancreas is either that or it's that. But I
Yeah.
don't, but my problem is I don't think they're retroperitoneal. And it says that these are retroperitoneal.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I honestly, I don't know. And your book doesn't have them labeled either. So all of these little tunnels right here, this is the large intestines, the transverse colon. All of these little holes is a sagittal section going through the jejunum, the small intestines. Down here's the ileum. The greater omentum, the parietal peritoneum. The visceral peritoneum would be lining all of these. The uterus, we got a girl here. Uterus, a bladder. And this is the peritoneum, so this is the parietal peritoneum. So the bladder resides underneath the parietal peritoneum. The detrusor muscle lays over the top of the bladder. Looking at the different layers, so remember we're looking at one complete tube all the way down. There's 4 major layers to this tube. It's hard to think. 4 major layers. The mucosa is the most internal layer. The submucosa underneath. The muscularis, the smooth muscle layer. And the serosa, or the adventitia is another name for the serosa area, the adventitia. Can't really see it very well, but here's the mucosa, the most inner lining, submucosa, muscularis, and serosa. What this picture is showing is the differences of this tube as you go from the esophagus to the large intestines. So this is the esophagus. Here's the serosa, the muscularis, the submucosa, and the mucosa. As you move down, all 4 of those layers stay the same. Serosa, muscularis, submucosa, serosa. So, sorry, submucosa, mucosa. You have 2 types of muscle in the muscularis. You have a longitudinal muscle going straight up and down. And then you have a circular muscle that wraps around it. So you've got two layers, one that's a longitudinal muscle, one that's a circular muscle. Where do you see the most amount of surface area in these three spots?
The villi,
Yeah, where's that in?
the gastric pits.
Well, yeah, but where along this
The jejunum,
the jejunum? Where's the jejunum?
the large intestine. No,
You're
not
close. What about the small intestines?
small intestine. That's
Yep.
right.
Because this is where you get the most absorption, is the small intestines.
That's right. That's where like all of your vitamins and minerals.
Mhm.
The large intestine does what? Water and flora, right?
Water, flora, and storage. So looking at the wall of the esophagus, comparing up the different layers, mucosa in the esophagus, submucosa, circular layer of smooth muscle, longitudinal layer. So looking at this up here, serosa, longitudinal muscle of the muscularis, circular muscle, submucosa, mucosa. In the esophagus, remember you have a lot of non-keratinized stratified squamous. What does it mean to be stratified squamous epithelium? What does stratified squamous epithelium mean? What's stratified mean? What's stratified squamous? What does it mean to have a stratified rock?
Say that again.
What does it mean to be a stratified rock?
Rock.
A stratified rock.
Isn't it layered?
It's layered. So stratified squamous means layered squamous epithelium. I know it was a really long time ago that we really started studying this. So this was 121. So stratified squamous, meaning the top layer is flat and we have lots and lots and lots and lots of layers that are designed to slough off this. And you're really grateful for this kind of thing when you choke on a Dorito. Because you're just scraping off the top layers. As we move into the stomach, we have gastric pits. and lining of simple columnar epithelium. What does it mean? If stratified means multiple layers, what does simple mean?
One.
One.
layer.
And they're column in shape, columnar, column-like in shape. Parietal cells, you might have to remember this. Let me see here. Parietal cells, I think they secrete enzymes. Chief cells secrete hydrochloric acid. Looking at another picture of the esophagus, just some different histological pictures. A lot of times we call the serosa the adventitia. It means the same thing. Muscularis, submucosa, mucosa. So moving down into the stomach, the esophagus, the fundus, top part, just like the when we'll see it in the uterus, the top part is the fundus. It's like a little oval top. We have three, rather than just having two layers of circular muscle, or excuse me, two layers of muscle, we now have three layers. A longitudinal muscle layer, still moving up and down. Circular, meaning it's surrounding it. And oblique, meaning it's at an angle. Rugae, meaning folds. The greater curvature, lesser curvature. One thing, cardia. I don't know why they called it the cardia. I would assume that it's because it's the closest to the heart. Because the heart would be about right here. The lower esophageal sphincter, two sphincters that we have. The lower esophageal sphincter, which is where you get when you're dealing with heartburn. That's when the stomach acid is coming up and burning the heck out of your esophagus. It's coming up through this sphincter. And the pyloric sphincter down here, separating the duodenum from the stomach. Antrum, pyloric antrum, then the pyloric canal and the pyloric sphincter. Pylorus right here. Find a picture within a cadaver. I thought these were interesting. X-rays of the stomach. Would be that pyloric sphincter, the duodenum. Pyloric antrum. The fundus. Gastric folds, or the rugae. Pyloric sphincter. in the duodenum. At the stomach specifically. Very deep pits, gastric glands, gastric pits. That looks like a scanning electron microscopy. Get that much texture and that much structure. The stomach, the duodenum, the jejunum, the ileum, the iliopapilla or ileocecal papilla, where the ileum is going to connect up with the cecum. Cecum, the appendix, the ascending colon, the transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anal canal. Looking at the small intestine specifically, like we saw before in the stomach, simple columnar, goblet cells that are secreting mucus, villi that are lined with this simple columnar, intestinal glands, duodenal glands of this are Brunner's glands in the submucosa. Another picture showing the same thing. You can see what, as we move from one thing to another, we're having a lot more surface area. The structure changes slowly as we move from one to the next. But the layers always remain the same. Serosa, longitudinal muscle, circular muscle, submucosa, and mucosa. Just showing a difference in the folding and the surface area and the structure. And I know this is a little blurry, the esophagus, the stomach, a lot more deeper glands in the stomach. The small intestines, the large intestines. Any questions so far? looking at the large intestines or the colon, the ileum, the last end of the small intestines, connects to the cecum, the ileocecal sphincter. The other word that it was called on the last page, the ileal duct. The appendix. If you look at it, you can see why the appendix would get easily infected. So this little area where things can get trapped. It looks like a worm. That's where the word appendix comes from. The ascending colon. The right colic or hepatic flexure. Transverse colon. The left colic flexure or splenic flexure. Descending colon. The sigmoid colon, or the rectum, anal canal, and anus. Along the whole area of the large intestines, we have this little connective tissue, linear tissue lining called the tenia coli that is essentially, stitching it up so that it's got a lot of different little curves and bubbles bubbling out of it. Ruffling of it. That's the right word, ruffling of it. The individual ruffles are the hostra. Little pieces of fat kind of hanging off it, epiploic, and I'll call it that, epiploic appendages. Epiploic, yeah. The rectum, the anal canal, anal columns, the internal anal sphincter, and the external anal sphincter. Pancreas, liver, and gallbladder. Falciform ligament, separating the left lobe of the liver from the right lobe of the liver. The gallbladder, the left hepatic duct, the right hepatic duct. These are all underneath it. We're making the liver transparent here. So gallbladder, right hepatic duct, left hepatic duct, cystic duct coming off the gallbladder. All of these are merging together with the common hepatic duct that's formed from the right and left hepatic ducts, are merging to form the common bile duct, which, like I pointed out during that video, is going to merge with the pancreatic duct or the main pancreatic duct. To form and enter the duodenum through the hepatopancreatic ampulla. In addition to the main pancreatic duct or the main pancreatic duct or and the common bile duct, we have an accessory duct, accessory pancreatic duct right here. Picture from your textbook. So right and left hepatic ducts forming the common hepatic duct. Common hepatic duct merges with the cystic duct to form the common bile duct or the bile duct. The bile duct is going to merge with the pancreatic duct or the main pancreatic duct. Which is going to enter the duodenum through the hepatopancreatic ampulla. So pancreatic duct merging with the common bile duct. To form the hepatopancreatic ampulla or the duodenal papilla. Any questions so far? Looking at the histology of the pancreas, the pancreatic islets or the islets of Langerhans of alpha and beta cells. Beta cells are the ones that secrete insulin. Alpha islets are the ones that are secreting glucagon. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune against the beta cells. Acini or exocrine glands are going to be secreting other digestive enzymes. Now, one more picture, and I probably should put this up above, but an X-ray, and I know this is really blurry. Transverse colon, we're looking at the colon, an X-ray of the colon. Here's the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and the rectum, and the sigmoid colon. Moving on, looking at some accessory glands. Well, we kind of already did that with the pancreas, but looking at the liver specifically, falciform ligament right here is going to continue as the round ligament, the right lobe, the left lobe. Here's the inferior vena cava, the gallbladder, the cystic duct, a cystic duct right here, bile duct, and so we're looking at an inferior view, so the small intestines would be right here. Hepatic portal veins and the hepatic artery proper hepatic artery. Four lobes of the liver, the right lobe, the left lobe, the caudate lobe, and the quadrate lobe. Liver is an amazing organ in that you can take a partial transplant of it and put it into another individual, and it will form the full liver, all four lobes. So we can do living transplants of the liver. So gallbladder, right lobe, quadrate lobe. It looks almost like a four-sided shape. That's the way that I tell the difference. Quadrate lobe, left lobe, round ligament, and the caudate lobe. The major organs of the major functional units or cell structure of the liver are the liver lobules that are made of hepatocytes with central veins running through the center. Got little sinusoids and hepatocytes. So looking at the blood flow through, this would essentially be a lobule. Looking at this, but on a side view. So that would be the top view. This right here would be this right here. Here's your central vein. The hepatic portal vein draining blood into the lobule. Bile caniculus, meaning little tiny canals. And I can't believe I cut that off. I think it gets squished up. Portal triad contains a hepatic portal vein, hepatic artery, and a bile duct. Hepatic artery, hepatic vein, hepatocytes, bile duct. Bile ducts branch off into the bile caniculi. Any questions? So lots of blood flowing through the liver, and you will see when we look at the liver that I have, lots of blood flowing through it. So major forms of digestion and general summary of digestion. Digestion starts with propulsion, the swallowing of food in the oral pharynx. Peristalsis, meaning a rhythmic constricting and relaxing of the layers of the muscle down the GI tube, GI tract. Chemical digestion, meaning enzymes breaking things down. Mechanical digestion, chewing in the mouth, churning in the stomach with acid and enzymes and gastric juices. Segmentation, breaking it down into smaller pieces, absorbable pieces. Absorption in the small intestines and large intestines, nutrients and water. So in the mouth, mechanical digestion includes chewing and swallowing. I'm sorry, bear with me. So mechanical digestion includes chewing and swallowing. Also in the mouth, enzyme digestion of carbohydrates and fats through lipases and amylase. Mechanical digestion includes peristaltic mix in the stomach, includes peristaltic mixing and propulsion. Chemical digestion of proteins and fats with proteases that are specifically optimized in their function in the acidic environment of the stomach. Absorption of lipid-soluble substances, such as alcohol and aspirin. Mechanical digestion in the small intestines includes mixing and propulsion, primarily through segmentation, meaning breaking things up. Chemical digestion, carbohydrates, fats, polypeptides, and nucleic acids. And absorption of peptides, amino acids, glucose, fructose, fats, so forth. In the large intestines, mechanical digestion includes segmental mixing and propulsion. Don't have any chemical digestion in the large intestines except by bacteria. An absorption of ions, water, minerals, vitamins, and organic molecules. Some vocabulary word, deglutition, meaning swallowing. Peristalsis is the rhythmic constricting and relaxing of the two different layers of muscle to mix and push things along the tube. Mastication, meaning to chew and tear apart. Segmentation, meaning to break up into smaller pieces. So in the organs, the different mechanical processes that occur. in the mouth, mastication and deglutition. In the pharynx, deglutition. In the esophagus, deglutition and peristalsis. You've got circular muscle in there and longitudinal muscle. In the stomach, churning and peristalsis. In the small intestine, segmentation and peristalsis. In the ascending and transverse colon, segmentation and peristalsis. Descending colon, mass peristalsis, and in the rectum, defecation. What is catabolism?
Catabolism means,
Well, what does it mean?
means like to break down or
Right, means to break down.
Catabolism.
Enzymes, substrates are the things that enzymes work on to produce products. Carbohydrates are broken down by amylases, the products of which are disaccharides and monosaccharides. Remember these from a really, really long time ago, amylases. We didn't ever really talk about those, but those are the enzymes that break down carbohydrates. Proteins, broken down by proteases, that break down peptides and amino acids. And peptidases are going to produce amino acids. One form of chemical digestion that specifically we need the gallbladder to help with. You make bile in your liver, but you can't store it very well without a gallbladder. That's the reason people can live without a gallbladder, but they have to be more careful with their diet. Lipases are break up lipids into glycerol and fatty acids. Bile contains bile salts that work to emulsify fats, allowing them to become solubilized by having a hydrophobic side and a hydrophilic side. Different digestive enzymes have different optimal pHs. Pepsin, which is an amazing protease, has an optimal pH of 2, meaning it's only real functional in the stomach. Amylase is not very functional in the stomach because its optimal pH is 7. Trypsin is better in a more basic pH, like your intestines. So its optimal pH is closer to a 9 or 10. It's also what meat tenderizer is made out of. So summary of digestion and absorption of proteins. In the mouth, chewing starts with this mechanical breakdown of proteins. In the stomach, the chemical digestion of the protein begins with hydrochloric acid and the enzyme pepsin, this guy right here. In the small intestines, polypeptides are broken down into amino acids. And by broken down into amino acids, dipeptides, and smaller peptide chains by protein digesting enzymes that are secreted by the pancreas, like trypsin. A variety of other different transport proteins are going to help move the products, the broken down the products that are now broken down things from protein digestion into the mucosal cell. Some amino acids share the same transport system. Dipeptides and tripeptides can enter the mucosal cell once they're broken down. Some amino acids are going to pass from the mucosal cell into the blood and travel to the liver. And the liver is going to regulate the distribution of those throughout the body. And the rest will be lost as feces. Do you have any questions for me? I think we get more quiet as the day goes on. Let's take a few minutes. We'll get out of class early today. I think I'm tired and I think you're tired. And I also know I have to be on the road within a little while, but I still want to do this dissection of the liver. And so let me get that ready and I will pull it out. And so give me about 5 or 10 minutes. We'll come back and work on that.
Okay.
One thing you'll see with this is there is a lot more blood than most things that we've done so far. Because that's what the liver does, is it does a lot of blood. So there's a lot more blood involved because that's the liver filters a lot of blood. And you'll see it doesn't quite look like what you expect it to look like. I can see where, no, we still got a lot of people. Because it's not fixed and it's also been out of the pig for quite a while. It's been frozen for a little while. But I can tell you when I got it home, right after I purchased it and stuck it in the freezer, it looked about just like this too. So it's not been affected by the fact that it's been in the freezer for a couple months. It kind of stinks, but I'm not going to say anything. So looking at it, you can see that you have essentially 4 lobes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it smells nasty.
Sorry.
No, I don't know why it smells funny. It doesn't normally I'm not even very sensitive to smell. But I can smell with this one for some reason. But if you look at it, you can see that it's a lot of lump, a lot of texture to it. Oh, okay, sorry, just a sec. Okay. Oh, nasty. I'm sorry, I'm kind of whining a little bit. So if you look right here, can you see the entrance?
Yes.
So that's part of the vessels that are going to lead in. That the blood is going to flow into the liver. So we saw those central veins and the liver vessels, capillaries, and veins. If you look at that, you'll see that there's multiple little holes. Multiple little holes. I'm gonna hold it, bear with me just for a second. Come here, you. Oh, fly. If you look, there are essentially 3 little holes in there that I can see so far. There's one right there. Come here. There's one right there. There's one right there. One right there, one right there, one right there. If I move down, here's more. There's one right there. Come on. If you I don't know how well, actually, let's see here. I'm going to cut it just a little bit here. Ah. If you look in there, do you see all the little tiny holes? Somebody give me some feedback. Do you see the holes?
Yes.
So these are all little vessels where the blood is moving. And I'm guessing what I'm cutting here, right here, this is the hepatic portal vein. And so what we're looking at are all the little holes and little entrances where the blood circulates and moves into the liver to get filtered. Because I can stick my probe down into all of these little tiny holes. And you can see even more holes as I move down. Oh, come on. So all along, as I've been opening this vein, all along there are all these little perforations, all these little holes. And you can follow them all the way down. All the way down. All the way down. So as I follow that down, my mother left me and she took my really tiny scissors that I used to dissect with. I may have to get a spare pair. All right, this isn't working. Here. Where? So as I cut into one of those major holes, I just keep seeing more and more holes. Because it's just a major place where the blood moves, circulates, and keeps flowing into all these little lobules and then draining out into the inferior vena cava, which will then drain into the right atrium of the heart. Just seeing if I can find something interesting looking at this lobe of this one lobe, and I can you can see the hole. Well, yeah, lots of holes in there. You can see lots of little holes in there. Lots and lots of holes. Wow. That hole just keeps coming all the way back here. So yeah, the more you, if I start going down, if I start cutting some of these into these holes, I just keep running into more and more little or tinier holes. There's another little hole. Right there. It's going to go all the way back there. If you look at it, can you see that it's kind of little beaded, dotted?
Yes.
So all of those are individual little lobules. We saw that little hexagon-like shaped thing with the vessels running in and out of it, and the nerves and the central vein running through the center of it. Is there anything specific you want me to try to find? Little tiny vein. Another one. Stick my probe in there. Another one. Another one that goes down really quite far. So bear with me. I just cut into another one of those holes. And it just keeps going down further and further. Yeah. Right. So one of the major entrances right here, going all the way. There. Going all the way in. It's like that. You can see all the texture to it. Just keep sticking my probe in there and stick it as far as it will go. Any questions? Things you'd like to see?
No. That's a huge organ.
It is, isn't it? And you gotta imagine that yours is about the same size.
No way.
It's not much different. You saw what the heart looked like? You remember that from before? I mean, if you figure that it's going to fit, it's going to be folded up. Right now, it's kind of laying flat, but it's going to be folded up. It's actually a lot bigger than you think it is. But it's going to be folded up approximately somehow.
Sorry, my computer locked up. I don't know if you asked me.
Nope.
Sorry. Just
Nope.
kinda...
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yours is not, yours is pretty big also. I've seen them in mice. I've seen, well, at the very last day of lecture, I'll dissect a fetal pig for you. And you'll see that their liver is pretty big also. There's not a whole lot to it. There's a lot of vessels, a lot of little holes, a lot of little places where the blood is just moving throughout. But you guys, that's really all that I can think of to show you. I could try doing this. Let's see here. I don't know how well this is going to work, but we're going to try. Come on. A very brutal cut. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry. Don't mind my sound effects over here. So yeah, lots of holes. Oh, it smells. So I just essentially cut off one of the lobes. And the hole right there, it's going down into there. There's a hole right there, coming down into there. I just stuck my thumb in it. Right there. So yeah, there's a big, so I just cut off one of the lobes, and there's a hole about right there. Oh, kind of right there. I think I'm gonna go on this end because I realized I could. Oh, come on. So there's the other end of the hole, which is, this is where I cut it off. This is where the hole was. That honestly, that's a big vein. And I'm wondering, I don't know exactly, but I wonder if that's the inferior vena cava, because that's a big old vein. Let's see here. When you open it up, there's a ton of little holes in there. So just lots and lots of little holes where blood is flowing in and out. Lots and lots and lots of little holes. Just lots and lots of holes. There's a big enough one that I can stick my forceps into it. All the way down there. Another little one. Another one. All sorts of just little tiny holes. Oh, I hope you can see all the little tiny holes. Just lots and lots of them. One thing that I would like to get, but I know I'm never going to get it because I can't even find them online, is a fixed stomach. Because I think that would be neat to look at too. Why do you think I've never wanted to get a large intestines? I've seen them, but why do you think I've never like dissected a large intestines that came fresh?
Aren't they like forever long?
Well, not the large intestines, the small intestines would be.
I've seen somebody.
What?
I've seen.
What's stored in the large
This guy say,
intestine?
wouldn't it be full of gross stuff?
Wouldn't it be
It's
feces?
full of poop.
Yeah.
And I've seen it one time, like I the guy who got me introduced to this butcher was brought home one and I saw it, and it's almost transparent. But he he said it doesn't smell too bad, and he put his finger up to my nose. Oh, it was bad. It was bad. Yeah, just lots and lots of little holes. Just keeps going and going and going. Just keeps going. You guys, I don't really know what else to show you on this. Should I tell you just to have a wonderful Easter, and I'll see you next week?
Yes.
Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You
Safe
too.
travels.
I was going to say safe travels.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. What are you doing? Don't get up here. You're not going to want to be up here. It probably smells pretty good to you, but you don't want to be up here. Abby, stay down from there. Stay down from there. You don't want to be up there, baby.